This is a Google Cloud Shell on which Google Kubernetes engine is already enabled. We have a cluster running here. So let's see some information about our cluster. So this is a command which you can use to view the cluster information. So this shows that the cluster is already functional. And now, in order to view if there is any config maps already, we can use the command kubectl get cm. Cm is nothing but the alias for config map. You can either use the complete word config map or even config maps, or in a shorter way, you can just go with cm and it would show you if there is anything by default. So there's nothing as of now. If at all you wanted to view the config maps belonging to all the namespaces, you could give the flag all namespaces and then view it. I think I made a typo error, so there is no S here. Okay, so let me just give one S. Yeah, now the typo is corrected and you see a list of lots of config maps which is in the kube system namespace. So this is the default namespace that Kubernetes is going to create for us, so we don't have to worry too much about it. We are going to focus on the default namespace. So there is nothing in the default namespace as of now. In order to create a config map, just like we do any other object, just check some syntax or some information related to this object. So we would use the explain command of kubectl explain cm for config map, and let's see some information about it. So here we have got the two fields that we are concerned about is the kind and the version. So version is going to be v1 and kind is going to be config map, and this is case sensitive. So let's just go ahead and create a config map with a YAML file. So I'm going to name it ConfigMap example.yaml. All right. So config. Let me just make E also in capital so that it's in camel case, just to follow some standard. It doesn't have any implication. All right. So Nano, I'm just going to use the Nano text editor to create this file. So let's try to define some information inside this YAML file. Let's start with 3 hyphens. This is optional, and let's end with 3 dots. This is again optional. So inside this file, we are going to use the API version first, which is going to be v1, which we saw from the previous step using the explain command. And then we can use the kind section. Inside this, we are going to say config map cnm, capital C and capital M. Sorry, capital C and capital M, both C and M in capital. And now we are going to define some information about it. The first section is going to be metadata, under which we can say what the name of this config map is going to be. So I can say this is I can say it's CM and hyphen example, all small letters. So config map example. And what else I can give? I'm going to keep it simple. Okay, so we are going to define some data inside this. After metadata, we are going to have the data section, under which we are going to specify what the information this config map has to carry. So in short, config map is nothing but a collection of key value pairs. You should already be knowing what a key value pair is. Like, it's like a dictionary or it's like a map, wherein you could store one key can have one value or one key can have multiple values, isn't it? So let's define 3 key value pairs here. Like maybe we can go with something called as a color. Color we can say orange, and then we can have something like fruit, and let this be apple. And what else? Okay, let's go with bike, and let's say bullet. So these are 3 key value pairs. The key is nothing but color, fruit, and bike, and the values are nothing but orange, apple, and bullet. So only 3 values in this config map. So let's get out of this editor by saving it. I pressed already Control X, and then I'm gonna hit Y for yes, and I'm out of the editor right now. Yeah, let's wait for some time. Okay, so let's verify if it has taken the information that we typed inside. So it has got it. Now we need to we need to make use of this information in any of the pod, isn't it? So that is going to be the main agenda. So ConfigMap by itself is not going to do anything, any trick. So we'll have to make sure that we export it, or I mean, sorry, we import it into a pod. Before that, let's create this ConfigMap using the create command and followed by the file name -f and then the file name. So this will create the ConfigMap. So let's just verify if the ConfigMap has got created or not. There is a typo again, so I should be giving CM and it's not VM. So CM stands for ConfigMap. So our ConfigMap has got created with all the data that we furnished. We could also look at more details inside the ConfigMap by giving the describe command. So describe CM stands for ConfigMap, and we need to give the name of the ConfigMap that we created, so which is nothing but CM example. So this would show the complete details as we gave. So under the data section, I'm going to highlight it for you. So this is the data section that we created, and all that we created is there inside. The color, the bike, and the fruit keys are all there. Now let's come to the next section wherein we need to import this onto a pod. So let's create a pod. Let's create a pod, let's say po example.yaml, and let's create it in the same way. So we need to give 3 hyphens and 3 dots to begin and end with, and these are optional again. So the API version is going to be version 1 for pod, and the kind is going to be pod. Now let's start with the metadata, wherein we could give some name for this pod. So let's name this po example, and yeah, we need to actually import the information from the config map. So how we can import this? So let's begin with the spec section, and let's give some let's start with the containers and name this container. So container example, you can give anything, any name that you want. So let's pull some image from the Docker Hub. So I think we can pull the HTTPD image, which is nothing but the Apache image, and we need to pull the information from the config map into this container. So one example, one use case for pulling this is in terms of environment variables. Whatever data we defined in the config map can be imported into the container which is inside the pod as an environment variable. For that, we can use a section called as env from, environment from, which is nothing but we are going to import the environment variables from a different object. So in this case, that object is nothing but our config map. So we need to give this config map ref section, and under the config map ref section, we need to kind of say which config map it's going to be. So that's nothing but the name of it, isn't it? So we just give 2 spaces, and then we give the name of it, and then we name it. I mean, whatever name we gave there. So that's CM example. That's it. So this is going to be simple. So going back to the pod's specification again, we just named it, and we call the container inside it. The container is going to have the image HTTP, which is nothing but Apache HTTP daemon, and environment from is the section where we are going to import the variables from an object. So in this case, that object is going to be config map. So we have to call the config map ref section, and inside that we name it. I mean, we put the name of the config map that we are going to call. All right. So Control X, Y. Let's verify using cat. So it has got it, and now let's try to create this pod. We created this pod. Verify this. Everything is going to be created in the default namespace. So even though we did not specify the namespace in the config map configuration or the pods configuration, by default it is going to be inside the default namespace. And note one point, PO is the alias for pods. So instead of giving pod or pods, you can just give PO, and it is going to throw the information for you. So this is already running. Okay. So the config map is created, the pod is created. So the information from the config map should be inside the pod or the container inside, isn't it? So let's log in to the container. So you can use the command kubectl exec and -it for the interactive mode, and then you can put the name of the pod, which is nothing but pure example, and then followed by bash. Now you are inside the container. Since we have only one container, even if you give the pod's name, you're gonna get into that container. So this is the Apache container. You got the shell prompt here, and now you need to see the environment variables which you imported from the config map, isn't it? So let's use the printenv command to list out the list of environment variables available in this container. So printenv is going to give a big list, at least, some number. I think it's around 10 or 20, isn't it? So you've got some number of environmental variables. So in order to just grep or just filter what we gave, we'll try to go with the environment variable that we defined. So I think we gave something like color. Yeah, so color is orange. That's what we defined. And then we gave fruit, which is nothing but apple. Yes, it's coming up. And what else we gave? We gave one more thing, which is nothing but the bike. So I didn't give a space, typo. Yeah, so the bike. So bike is nothing but bullet. So this way we are going to import information from the config map into the container. This is only an example of, let's say, 3 variables, but it could be even more complex. Like, we could import lots of information, and not just environment variables. We could also connect the config map as a volume to the pod, isn't it? I mean, that is also possible. So lots of use cases are possible, but this should give you some fundamental idea on how a config map works as an object in Kubernetes. Hope the session was useful, and thank you so much for watching.